This is the new drawing board 6 with the high accuracy of 0.05. I've got a diagram here of an intarsia moose, which I'm going to trace out, digitize, and we're going to cut it on the laser, all the parts. This will be a good way to show the accuracy because these parts have to fit together, close tolerance. Here we're using the Logic Trace 2018 to digitize this diagram. I selected tracing with polylines. There's two ways that this diagram can be traced or digitized. One way is to trace out the whole diagram using the polyline trace, and the second method is to trace out each part so it can be cut and fitted together. If you trace each part, then you should use the unconnected tracing. Whichever method is used, it really doesn't matter because in the end I'm going to use a vector editor. I'm going to edit each part so it can be cut as a separate part. Shown here, I went along and I traced out each part and saved it. And then every once in a while I would save my work, create a file, just in case I messed up and I had to go back and use the editor to delete something and redraw it. As I said, if you make a mistake, just stop, go to the editor, go back to that part, delete that part, and redraw it. Because of the complexity of the diagram, it's very easy to cause a crossed vector. And that's why, in the end, we'll have to use a vector editor to get rid of some of these cross vectors and make sure that each part is a standalone part to be cut. The other point here is to make sure you keep track of where you are. Sometimes you'll see there where I skipped a section and I had to go back and do that section. Usually I use a red pencil or something to mark my diagram. This time I didn't. I just tried to concentrate a little extra. You can see here the parts all overlap. So one part will share a line with another part. So these parts have to be isolated to be cut as separate items. And that's usually done at the end with the editor. If you don't isolate these parts properly, then the vector will become an open vector, and things like lasers or CNC machines will not cut them properly. The software is unique because if you save your work frequently, if you make a mistake, it's very easy even to go right back and open up that file. It'll carry on right from where you stopped. And that's important to me because this diagram is complicated and I wouldn't want to have to start it from scratch each time. The drawing goes smoothly. I just keep track of what I've drawn and what has to be drawn because I keep my computer screen close to the drawing board. So all I do is I look up to see how the drawing's coming along and I either correct it or carry on. The arrows on the diagram, someone has put those arrows on indicating the grain direction. Just to make the wood stand out more for each part, give it the appearance of three-dimensional. This type of diagram, intarsia, is normally done with a scroll saw, but in this case we're going to laser cut the parts. As you can see, I just went around and did each part in a sequence. And like I said before, the computer screen was close to me, so I was able to see just where I was and what had to be done. Right about here I made a mistake, so I went back through the editor and deleted that mistake and redrew it. That's why you're seeing those white flashes. That's me going through each part to find the part that I had to redraw. We're completed the tracing, so now I'm going to save my work. Here I've loaded the file into a vector editor. I'm using Aspire 9.5, and I'm going to go through each section and cut out the parts I don't want and edit the parts that need to be changed. Aspire is excellent for editing vectors because it'll tell you the quality of the vector editing. Now I'm going to run my completed file through the simulator just to see how it's going to cut out. Now I'm going to isolate each part and save each part to be cut out separately. This takes a bit of time, but you'll know the parts are going to fit as I pull each part out of the moose diagram. So in the end, we're going to have a lot of parts to cut out, and they're all going to be DXF files. Now I'm going to load up the laser software, and we're going to start cutting all the parts. This laser is 150 watt. I'm using about 47% power to cut these parts. First, I'm going to cut them in mahogany plywood. Once I'm happy with the fit with all the mahogany plywood, then I'll turn around and I'll cut all the parts again out of black walnut, and I'll vary the density of the color just to give it some look. The walnut I used is all 1/4 inch to 5/16 thick. It didn't take long to cut out the parts. Some parts I was able to nest them. So here I'm checking to see how they fit. This is the finished product. The moose looks good. It's all done in black walnut and with a lacquer coat.